Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us once again on our class of the Pez Mightier Than the Sword. Hope you all had a beautiful Pesach and a meaningful Pesach. We're going to get back now to our regular programming. So we are on day 89, page 252, and an interesting dilemma, right? An interesting question. The question's like this. This year, for the first time ever, your brother did not bring the family to your parents' house for Pesach. I should have done this before Pesach, but okay, right? Let's say he didn't bring your parents' house for Shavuos, right? Okay. Lag BaOmer, didn't bring to the Lag BaOmer party, right? And he told your father that the reason was that the poor sleeping habits of the new baby, which were made much worse when he didn't sleep in his own room, in his own crib, right? However, you know the real reason. Your brother wants to make his own Seder for his family, right? He wants to have his own Lag BaOmer party. He wants to have his own cheesecake. Okay, it makes more sense with a Pesach Seder, right? So just leave it as a Pesach Seder, right? With his family. Your father suspects as much, and he demands that you tell him the real reason, should you? Right, so there's a couple of things to talk about, right? What the son is in essence doing is not necessarily wrong, right? It makes sense. I enjoy making my own Seder too. Last year we did it, 2 years ago we did it in Israel a couple of times. Right, there's a certain sense, especially as your kids get older, as you develop your own family. Right, there's an idea, and especially if maybe the Seder that you went to as a kid growing up is maybe you've grown different from that Seder, or maybe not. It's still a similar kind of Seder than you would make for yourself, but you want to make your own Seder. So what the child is doing is not necessarily wrong, but the child knows that the father will be insulted, right? The father knows that the father will be insulted. And if the father wouldn't be insulted and the father understands, right? So then the child doesn't have to go ahead and make up excuses. On the sidebar, right? As parents, and I'm very lucky to be learning this from my parents. And it's very important to not make your kids feel guilty for their own personal growth, right? It is a thing of growth to be able to make your own Seder. It is a thing of growth to be your own person, not to be reliant on your parents forever. You're an adult. You have your own kids, you have your own family, right? On the same point, you should encourage them and make them feel comfortable to come over to the house. And there's a concept of family and things like that, right? But, on a sidebar, there is an important lesson to be learned that sometimes as parents, right, we might make our kids need to do a white lie, right? Because it could be that, the baby does have a harder time, but that's just an excuse. Some people are very rigid on their kids' schedules, right? But most parents, could give a little leeway here, their family, they go, right? So it's a lame excuse. I'm not saying it's not a legitimate excuse, right? So just a sidebar, important in parenting, more in older kids, and you have to know different levels as they grow. When they're teenagers is one level. When they become young adults is another level. When they become parents and a family, they have their own spouse and families, and it's another level of not allowing them to feel that you are proud of when they take initiative of their own growth. I want to do my own Seder, right? And the kids should be able to talk to the father and say, hey, I love coming over and it's really great for the family, but I think it's important. I want my kids I want to have my own Seder. I want to be able to, have that one-on-one with my kids, be able to develop that as my family. And, we'll come for Sukkot, we'll come for Shavuos, we'll come for summer break, whatever it is, but to be able to have that conversation, and the father should just talk it over with the kid or the mother, right? But the parents should talk it over with the kid, but encourage the kid. And with kids we're talking about could be a 30-year-old, it can be a 40-year-old or a 20-year-old, right? Encourage the kid to have that initiative to be able to not be totally dependent on the parents. It's not a healthy thing for when you have 20, 25-year-old, 30-year-olds are dependent completely on their parents. They have to realize that they have a life and they have responsibilities, right? And that's something important. So that's a sidebar, right? It has nothing to do with our discussion, but we love doing these sidebars, right? I think that's just an important factor to reflect on, that this whole scenario, this whole situation would not necessarily would have even popped up. So let's just get to the question. We'll open it up for comments. You could comment on anything I talk about, right, regarding this question, right? So the question is, what should you do? So on one hand, you know, he has a legitimate reason, right? It is okay, but everybody knows that it's just an excuse, right? Are you allowed to tell your father, right, the real reason? There's a concept of kibbud av v'em, honoring your parents, right? You have a mitzvah of honoring your parents. There's a mitzvah of honoring your parents. Your father, right, insists, demands, you got to tell me the right reason. You got to tell me what's going on, right? The mitzvah of honoring your parents force you to say the right reason. And you could, you know, it's okay. So maybe maybe he'll understand. Maybe he won't understand. I'm not talking about that like the son said something negative about the parents. And we're not talking about that the son is saying something like, you know, really bad. Right? It's not joining him at the Seder, and like he just wants to develop his own Seder. What do you guys think? What is the son obligated to do, not obligated to do? You know, and what do you guys think about this scenario?
I think that honoring your parents is telling the truth, is being honest with them.
Right, but are you obligated to honor your parents? Because don't forget, if you tell the truth, and we talk about the scenario over here, and unfortunately, it's a common scenario, the father will be insulted. So you're going to create a little animosity in between the father and the son. So by you telling the father the truth, you are in essence also speaking rechila. So you've got, on one hand, the obligation of honoring your parents. On the other hand, you have the obligation, you have the prohibition of rechilas, of creating animosity in between two different people, right? But it is a sticky situation because, you know, you could start, you know, you could start fumfering, as we say, right? It's not such a bad thing. It is. How is the father really going to take it? You know, just stick to the story, but I'm lying. That's what he said. How do I know I'm lying? Right? There's a mitzvah of kibbud av v'em. Right? So you're right. Honoring your parents is telling them the truth. Question over here, is there an obligation of honoring your parents?
Well, if you're in the same city, you can compromise. One night go there.
No, we're not Marilyn, let's phrase it. We're not talking about if the kid that is not joining them for the Seder, if he's doing the right thing or not. We're talking about the brother or the sister, right? Or the brother-in-law or the sister-in-law, right? Or whatever it is, right? The uncle, the aunt, the cousin, right? The next door neighbor, the cats, dogs, whatever, right? Are they, if the father is asking them, right, what is the real reason why your brother's not coming, right? Are they obligated to say? We're not talking about how to be able to fix the situation. That's a good discussion, right? And as I mentioned, you know, there's a lot to talk about, to break down over here regarding parenting, right? The kid should never even be in such a situation that he feels he has to, you know, give a little white lie, right? You know, parents should encourage it, as we mentioned before. We're talking about now the brother that is asked by the father, what is the real reason why your brother's not coming, right? So there's no way to fix it, right? By if they're in town, come or not come. The question is, what is he obligated to say or not obligated to say?
That brother should butt out completely.
Brother should butt out, but he has a mitzvah of kibbud av v'em.
Okay, well, you could talk very nicely to Dad. If you need to know that, ask him. I don't know.
Or can you just say, I'd rather not say?
You could rather not say, but you're still not. An interesting discussion regarding the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, right? When your parents ask you something, and I try to tell this to my kids all the time. They don't always listen. I'm just kidding. Right? I think most kids have, and I know as a kid myself, the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em is when a parent asks a kid something, right? They don't answer that question. They're violating the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em. Right? Your parent asks you something to do something for them, or that is, you have now a mitzvah of kibbud av v'em. So if they don't do that, right? So you could say, I don't want to say that. That's very nice, right? But you're not fulfilling the mitzvah. And the father says, no, but I want to know, right? The father's wrong, right? But there's still the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, right? So there's to say that we could say a wording that there's the mitzvah of kibbud aim, and if you lie, you say I don't know, so then you're lying, and you're also not fulfilling the mitzvah of kibbud aim because you're now doing two things, right? So if you say I'd rather not say, so you're not lying, right? But you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of kibbud aim. So, but the question is, obligated to not. Do you have the obligation of mitzvah kibbud aim or not? Go ahead, Suzette.
So, I guess I'm trying to understand then, if mitzvahs have orders, like on the ladder, like is one mitzvah higher than the other? And if that's the case, is the command to not speak toelis higher than the order of the mitzvah you just mentioned? So how I see it is that the brother does not, even in honoring his parents, does not have an obligation to state what the dispute is.
Why not?
Because it's not his story to tell. That's how I see it. It's not his story to tell. And as much as he might know the story, he doesn't know all the facts. So that's my.
So let me ask you like this. I'm not.
Go ahead. I can take it.
Right. Let me ask you like this. What happens if there's no prohibition of rechilas, right? But your father wants to know about, how's your brother doing and in business or, in his house, how he's doing, right? It's not going to create rechilas, right? There's no theory prohibition that you'll be doing. But you say the same thing. It's not my story to tell, so therefore I don't have the mitzvah, I don't have the obligation.
Right. But in this case, I think what the difference is I see versus, how's your brother doing in business is there seems to be an issue. And the father knows there's an issue. So he needs not to try to get that from someone else. But
again, we've established this father needs to go to parenting class, right?
Right.
We've established this, right? This father, this mother, right, needs to go to parenting class. They're not doing a good job, right? He should not be sticking his nose in, right? He should have never in the first place made his kid feel that he needs to make a white lie. Should definitely not be, getting other siblings involved in his curiosity / lack of self-esteem, right? So this father's wrong, right?
Right.
He needs help. He needs to go speak to his therapist, his rabbi, right? Whatever it is, right? He needs to build his self-esteem and to move forward. But just because the father has a lack of self-esteem, just because the father is wrong, right? Not necessarily does that take away the mitzvah of kibbud aim. Question is, right? Is there a mitzvah of kibbud aim or not? The father's wrong, but the father did what he did. That's the question. So you're saying, since it's not my story to tell, so therefore I don't have a mitzvah of kibbud aim. What I'm saying
it's subject to not speaking and possibly, speaking.
Okay, so that's what I was trying to bring out, and that's what regarding, and Emily will take you in a minute, right? That's why I was asking, just business or whatever it is. So let's just read. So you're saying that when there is a different prohibition, right? Over here, rechilas, right? So then the mitzvah of kibbud aim does not apply.
It's secondary.
There's no secondary.
It doesn't apply.
Either applies or doesn't apply.
If you can't select A and B, then only A.
Right. We don't have a second council over here, right?
Okay. Yes.
It doesn't apply.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay. Great. Excellent. Emily, you're next.
I thought that I'm just my understanding of kibbud aim is that it can't like if there's another, if a parent is asking you to do something that's not allowed, then you can't do it. Like kibbud aim is like if your parent asks you to break Shabbos, so like you don't break Shabbos. Like just because they ask you to do it doesn't mean that they like kibbud aim, I think is a more generic thing. And it's not like whatever your parent tells you to do, you just do it. I don't think that's the definition of kibbud aim. It's like whatever your parent says to do, you just do it. Doesn't matter what else happens. That's not what kibbud aim is. So here, the parent is clearly asking the kid to get involved in rechilas, I guess, in this scenario, or lashon hara, or whatever it is. something like that, it's clearly not in anyone's best interest. Because even if he tells the father, it's just going to upset the father, and then the father's gonna be mad at the brother. So like, there is no toelis in this. It just, I don't know. I guess my understanding of kibbud av v'em is that it's very, whenever like someone's getting, whenever there's a mitzvah, whenever there's an avera that the parent is asking the child to do, then the child doesn't do it. Like that doesn't, that's, you know, like that doesn't, does that make sense?
So yes, it does make sense. And let's just put you're saying similar to what Suzette is saying. You're just saying more of a global mitzvah of kibbud av v'em. Doesn't make a difference what the prohibition is, right? But along the lines of what Suzette's saying, since the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em over here is up against a prohibition, right? The mitzvah of kibbud av v'em does not apply, right? It is an all-encompassing thing, but there are clauses, right? There are rules of when it applies and doesn't apply, right? So you're saying that since it is going up against a prohibition, so therefore the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em does not apply, and that's same as Suzette is saying. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can't, right, that it's, if they ask you, but also in addition, I don't think kibbud av v'em, and then you ask the scenario of like, what if the parent asks how the kid is doing in business, right? Or your sibling is doing in business. So again, I think that kibbud av v'em is not just like whatever the parent tells you to, I mean, I don't know, I guess.
It is.
Know.
It is.
Like,
kibbud av v'em is a misunderstood mitzvah. If you will get hurt in some way, I have a whole book. Maybe it's an interesting thing to go through.
Next book.
Next book. There's a very the laws of kibbud av v'em. It's in the Code of Jewish Law. The laws of kibbud av v'em, when it applies, when it doesn't apply, and it's not as thick as lashon hara, right? But the general rule of kibbud av v'em it's in the Ten Commandments, right? It is one of the Ten Commandments. It is one of the fundamental mitzvos. But there are a lot of clauses, right? So you just have to know if it fits into the clause of where the mitzvah doesn't apply or not, right? And for our discussion right now, I don't want to get too sidetracked to the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, right? But for our purpose right now, you and Suzette are both saying that regarding going against a prohibition, let's say rechilas or other prohibitions, a mitzvah does not apply, and therefore you're not obligated to say it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that'd be my vote.
Okay, Cindy, I saw you took your mute off before. Did you want to say something?
No, I thought I put it on.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good to hear your voice anyways. Okay, any other thoughts, Martha?
I have a little thought. Okay, so I'm the older sister, and I've been in scenarios I feel like this. And one of the things, what you were kind of explaining before, is not divulging what the brother is doing necessarily, or maybe that he's lying or not lying, whatever. It's just saying, well, isn't that a good thing that he's going to have his own Seder? He's going to do that. That's not a good thing to say.
No, because again, in this scenario, the father's going to feel that you're not here to broker to try to make the father feel that what the son is doing the right thing or not. The father might be thinking, but what you're doing is you're cementing and reinforcing to the father that that's the reason why the son is doing it, and the son lied to him regarding the reason. So what you're still,
that would be bad. So we're back to honor,
right? And you're speaking rechilas, because you're creating the animosity. So we have to understand, we have to remember, rechilas is the outcome of the situation. We mentioned before, rechilas is posting something. Rechilas is, what you can have rechilas even by suggesting something with your eyes or your manner, right? Rechilas is creating animosity between two different people. So, if the father knows, and now you are the brother that's trying to make peace in between the two, right? So then, yes, that's a good thing to say, right? Dad, Chaim Yankel's, he's really developing. His kids are older. It's like nice for him to do his own Seder, right? Remember the first time you made your own Seder, yes. So then that's the place to do it. But if the father is asking you, that means to say that he doesn't know for sure. He's just guessing. He's guessing in the dark. By you saying that, you are reinforcing it, and you are actually being the prohibition of that is exactly the prohibition of rechilas, right? By creating that animosity. So you're all correct, right? You're all correct. The mitzvah of kibbud avim. Let's just read quickly the thought. Even though we are obligated to honor our parents' requests, in this case, doing so would violate the Torah prohibition against rechilas. You suspect that your answer would create hard feelings in between your father and your brother, right? And likewise, right, it's not only with the mitzvah of kibbud, likewise, we are not permitted to speak rechilas when your mother, teacher, or rav requests information from you. Mitzvah rechilas, right, is extremely powerful, right? The prohibition of rechilas regarding the mitzvah of kibbud avim, father and mother, right? That is any prohibition, as Emily was saying, right? If your father or mother asks you to, go to a non-kosher restaurant with you, right? And they say, we really love for you to eat the salad. Right, it's a real thing. Salad's not a problem. Salad could be a major problem. You don't know if it's a restaurant that uses their knives for different things. So you don't know what they cut the salad with, especially if there's onions in there, right? You don't know if they check the lettuce for bugs and things like that, right? So you're not allowed to, right? I'll be happy to come with you and drink a Coke, right? And then again, you have to know every scenario. It might not be proper for you to go to a non-kosher restaurant, right? If there's other people around and they see you with your kippah and things like that, we spoke about that's called maris ayin. And I don't want to get too sidetracked regarding, right, what is considered I'm just showing different scenarios. It might be a problem. There's no mitzvah kibbud avim when your parents tell you to do something against the Torah, right? And rechilas is something that the Torah prohibits. Likewise, they're throwing in here your teacher or your rav, right? Again, and that's where Emily threw in, unless there's it is toelas, right? If a rav or a teacher needs to be able to actually discipline someone or help out the communities, there's a problem in the community and needs to clarify something or to come out or make amends in between people, right? So then there could be scenarios, right, where it is permitted with the laws of toelas and things like that. But overall, right, just fishing for information, just to be able to get to know more, it has some suspects about, some people, whatever it is, right? You have to be very careful, right, not to speak rechilas. Now again, rechilas is if it will create a masid between these two people. So if the Rav asks you, this person, right, I saw him, after the sermon, I saw him schmoozing with you, right, like, did he like say something against my sermon? Did he not like it, right? You're not allowed to say, right? You're not allowed to say, because that's going to create a masid between the rabbi and this person. And by you saying that, maybe the person did, maybe the person didn't, right? The rabbi might feel that way because maybe there's been bad blood in between the two, right? You're not allowed to say that, right? Or other things, right? There's a hot topic in town. I don't know of any hot topics that might be up in town, right? But someone might have, in a group of people, that's lashon hara, right, from that person, right? But let's say someone, spoke a little not nice about the rabbi or said some things, and the rabbi heard that there was this group or whatever, and, comes over to you and says, hey, I heard about it, just, curious, I just want to know, to have my finger on the pulse, right? What was said, right? You have to tread very, very carefully, right? It is important for the rabbi or administrator or the teacher, right, to have their finger on the pulse, to know, what's going on. You have to be very careful. This is where you have to be very careful the way you word things, right, to make sure that there's no animosity. Now, if the rabbi knows that there is animosity between, right, so then again, creating animosity or making the animosity greater, as we spoke before. But if we had a scenario where someone knows their neighbors are angry or whatever it is. I remember the example. We could look it up, right? It was just it was a little while ago, right? The neighbor.
That whole thing at the pool.
Right, the pool, day 86. I was just looking at it, right? So he said, right, creating more ill will, right, is also. But if you know there is a little ill, you just, you're not creating more. You're saying, yeah, there's groups of people that don't like what's going on, right? And that's what they're talking about, right? They're just laying out their frustration about how some things are going, right? So you're not creating more ill will, right? So then, right? So then that might not be prohibited, right? But it's creating more ill will, right? Or if there wasn't any ill will, there was someone there that did not, the rabbi doesn't think, and you're going to create ill will, right? So then that is a problem, right? And you're not allowed to. You have to be careful how you say it, right? Regarding our scenario, regarding kibbud av v'em, that's pretty clear cut, right? The obligation of kibbud av v'em does not trump, right, any prohibition in the Torah, right, or to transgress a positive. So your parents say, listen, this matzah thing, it's really crazy, right? Eating this, spending so much money, right, on matzah. It's like a hard. We could get this yummy, bread or whatever. Let's just be without it, right? You gotta not let to listen to them. You gotta buy matzah. There's a mitzvah, the positive commandment of eating matzah on Pesach, right? The first night, at least, the Seder night, right? The other nights is not a positive commandment. You fulfill a mitzvah, right? But listening to your parents does not override the other Torah prohibitions, and that's the important lesson, right? There's other side lessons, as we mentioned, regarding parenting and things that we should be aware of, regarding allowing our kids to grow, not be helicopter parents, right? It depends on the stage of life, right? Teenage kids, middle school kids, right, need to be on top of, and they need to feel their little independence, but at the same time, right, it's not healthy to have too much independence. It's important to have, for them to know that you are their parent and you are the authority, and not that they could do whatever they want, right? But, as the kids develop and grow and become a family, it's important for parents to encourage their kids, right? At the same time, family is also important, but being able to at least have that discussion. I'll just have, my brother in Toronto, right? Thank God he is, we're a large family, and this having everybody together would have been a little crazy, right? We had 4 families together, and it was crazy. Right? If my brother would have joined us, right, that would have been even crazier. But for the Seders, he made his own Seder, and he spoke to my father about it, right? And he said, listen, his kids are older, and he has a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old, and younger kids too. He has a 2-year-old too, right? But he wanted to be able to have that discussion with them, and really be able to focus on them, and for the kids to feel that focus. And my father said, no, 100%, he totally understands, and he encouraged him to do it. Right? We joined together father meals. Okay, so over here he lived in town, right? But it's important to allow family kids, right, to be their own person, right? At the same time, of course, encouraging that family is important. So that's a sidebar of lessons learned from them. But regarding the laws of lashon hara rechilas over here, lashon hara / rechilas. Now we're talking about rechilas, right? One is not allowed to speak rechilas, even if there's a commandment in mitzvah kibbud av v'em. Emily, I'll take your comment in 1 second. Let's just do the quote of the day, right? And then we'll do your comment. Quote of the day: perfecting one's character demands even greater sacrifice than mesirat nefesh, sacrificing one's life to Hashem, right? Sacrificing one's life for Hashem. How many Jews have done that throughout history? Unfortunately, too many, right? In the Holocaust alone, over 6 million Jews, right? Terrorist attacks, inquisitions, crusades, right? It is considered, right? Your neshama goes straight to heaven, right? Unfortunately, people have had to do it, but it is the ultimate sign of showing that we believe that spirituality is greater than the materialistic world, right? And says Rav Naftali Amsterdam, right, in the Chai of Musar, right, one of the students of Yisrael Salanter, right, the father of the Musar movement, right, that it is greater, it takes greater sacrifice, right, for perfecting one's midos, because sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh, sacrificing a life, it is one of the hardest things, but it's a one-time thing. Right? Once it's done, it's done. You don't have two lives, right? I don't mean to be laughing about this, right? But when it's done, it's done, right? Perfecting one's midos, character, his demeanor, his way of speaking, his relationship with people is an ongoing thing. And it's constantly struggles in front of you. It's constantly scenarios, people say things, people act things, people, spouses, children, parents, friends, neighbors, schools, synagogues, Facebook, Twitter, maybe not anymore. I'm just kidding, right? Now that was bought out, right? But whatever, right? I didn't mean to say that, right? Scratch that from the recording, right? But whatever it is, right? There's so many avenues. Just driving on the street and someone cut you off. You know, last week I had to go down. The week before Pesach, right? I had to go down. It's like a blur. The week before Pesach, I had to go down to Miami to get Rina a emergency passport. Right? It was a whole balagan. I was in the passport office all day. Baruch Hashem, we got it. Right? I went down Sunday. Monday, I was here the whole Monday. Right? And we were driving back after a long day, right? We got there like at 8:30 in the morning. We didn't leave till like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? You know, and I'm driving back. And of course, there's Miami traffic, you know, driving back to Hollywood to my sister-in-law's house that worked at. I brought Sheva back up, right? And this guy literally cuts me off. I'm going, you know, speed limit, this. Right. And, you know, but there's a lot of traffic and a lot of things, you know, you have to be very safe. And this guy literally cuts me off. Right. I had to slam on the brakes and switch lanes. Right. And the guy's talking on his phone like this. Right. Without it, just moves on. Right. It took all my control and knowing that Reno was in the car, right, not to scream out. I'm not saying I'm a tzaddik, right? But we constantly have things, daily things, right? That we have to constantly work on our character, our demeanor, our way of conducting ourselves, what comes out of our mouth, right? How we react to things. And therefore, it says in Naftali Amsterdam, right, that it is a greater perfecting one's character, demeanor, right, demands even greater sacrifice than Mesiras Nefesh, and sacrificing one life, right? Not chas v'shalom in any way to take away, right, from the we call them kadoshim, right? We call them a carbon ola, right? A carbon ola sacrifice, the ola sacrifice, right, was consumed completely by the altar, which considered went totally to Hashem, right? The Kohanim didn't get any, right? The person that brought it didn't bring any, right? It's considered completely consumed by the altar, and all of it goes up to Hashem, and people that have sacrificed their lives for the sake of heaven, right? For the sake of Judaism, right? Throughout history and even now, stabbings and terrorist attacks just because they're Jewish, right? Or they're defending the Jewish state, right? Or defending Jewish people, right? They're Ola, they're Kadoshim, they're the holies. And God forbid we're not taking away from that. But on a daily basis, one has to realize perfecting their character, their demeanor, the way they act, the way they talk, being careful what comes out of their mouth, it demands even a greater sacrifice. It's an ongoing thing, and that's a tremendous thing to reflect on, right? Not to, God forbid, in any way scare us away, but to make us realize the importance of how we really have to be on top of ourselves. Okay, we're going to stop the recording. Thank you, everybody.